three of the ones that we're waiting on are members of my own Inklings group. So they've already heard this spiel before. So if you don't mind, Mike, I'll go ahead with my introduction of Inklings and
you
what
go
we do.
for it. Go for it.
All right. And forgive me, yeah, I'm going to read this because I'm not very good at speaking off the cuff. So, for all of you who don't know me, I'm Robin Adams, founder of Inklings Creative Expressions. You'll forgive me for sounding like I'm reading the spiel, but I actually am because I'm a writer, not a speaker. Inklings CE is a platform for writers of all genres and skill levels, and in the future, artists, musicians as well. For all of us to come together, interact with other writers, and get valuable critique, share experiences, and most importantly, be educated in our field. I achieved the education part by inviting other writers and members of our community, i.e. lawyers, teachers, and others who have skills vital to helping us along our artistic journey. Even though we have guest speakers who teach us, we are also teachers to each other. Your experience and skills are valuable and will help others along their journey. Our groups and events are free to all those who want to participate. I'm thrilled that we now have the virtual option, and boy, did it take me a long time to get to this point. And we have been able to reach out across the country to writers. Inklings CE has a wonderful variety of writers, genres, and levels. So without further ado, I thank you for being here today. And now I turn it over to you, Mike.
Well, thank you. And yes, for everybody that doesn't know me, I know a lot of it's referred to as TM Brown. That's just an author name. All my friends and family know me as Mike. So, you know, if you want to get my attention, you know, yell out Mike, don't yell out TM, because people try to guess that. They say they'll try to call me Tim, and they'll do, you know, and I'll sit there and kind of do a double take for a second. But anyway, I appreciate Robin asking, and we had talked about this months ago, and having this opportunity to share with y'all. We were originally going to do this, you know, as a live event, and obviously for obvious reasons, a little bugaboo got in the way, and we're doing this virtually, which is allowing us to have some people that would not possibly normally be able to attend the meetings in Canton. I know here in matter of fact, it's always difficult for me because as you can see, I'm not on Town Square in Newnan, but you can pretend I am. So I'm giving a shout out to Newnan behind me here. You know, but there's a lot of the wonderfulness is to broaden the reach, and that's what Robin was alluding to. So I'm trying to, excuse me for being distracted a second. I'm introducing some new people here. Becky just came in here, and I got stuck with being the host too, so I've got to monitor who's waiting. So, and I got the old man's disease, which means I can get tunnel vision. So anyway, what we're going to be talking about today is this, and I'm going to give a couple of preludes before we get started. I hope everybody got their handouts. If you didn't, you didn't lose anything. I can certainly send you some links to get the handouts after we're done, and that's not a problem whatsoever. I'm a retired teacher as well, so you'll notice in your handouts there's a few blank spots. So as you would probably remember from your school days, it just helps you kind of, you know, stay up with your notes and fill in. So if you miss something, you know, holler and say something, or, you know, be patient, and we'll get it all filled in for you. It's not, the world won't end. Couple of premises. This authorpreneurship class is something that I got invited to do just over 2 years ago, almost 3 years ago, at a conference down in Columbus. They asked me to come back, and because I'd spoke about authorpreneurship, and they asked me to do a workshop. So I created a all-day 4-hour workshop on authorpreneurship, which is a little bit more in depth than what we're going to go into. But I put the core of this down to about a 75-minute presentation, give or take a few minutes, depending on conversation. And I wanted to make it so that the key is this. We're going to talk mostly about attitudes for authors. How many of y'all consider yourselves, first of all, to be an extrovert? You love getting in front of people. You love talking about your, in front of people. You'll stand in front of the church. You'll stand in front of the Kiwanis Club or whatever and give your spiel, or you'll sit in front of a huge audience and answer questions and feel comfortable doing it. The truth is probably 90% of all authors are introverts. And that's one of the reasons we do hometown novel nights, is to help people break the ice. Because the more you do it, the more comfortable you are. So entrepreneurship is not, I'm not going to tell you how to write a book. That's not my job. I'm still trying to be better at that craft myself. I feel like I learn every day about how to write a better book. I've written 3. I'm working on 4 now. I've had fun with it. But the key thing is what I have enjoyed is meeting people, attending events of all shapes and forms and kinds, where I can get in front of fellow authors and readers and talk to them. And, that's the way I sell most of my books, which this bugaboo, and I refer to it that way, when it totally destroyed my 3rd book's book launch, which was in May 26th, my book tour just went right down the tubes. Workshops, festivals, book events at bookstores. I only ended up doing some very, very, very selected ones that I was very lucky to do. And okay.
No.
There you go. Put yourselves on mute, but just raise your hand if we, or get off of mute.
I thought I did.
Okay. All right. That's okay. So anyway, the point just being is that I think that for authors to have that confidence to get in front of people and introduce your books is the very best way to sell your books. Who wants to sell more books? Who thinks that there's always room to sell more books? Is there anybody that's got it down pat? Is anybody here, qualified to be a bestseller, on the New York Times or Atlanta Journal or something? I'm still learning every day. But I do know that there are some secrets that are not that secret, but maybe you need some reminders. So that's what Authorpreneurship's about, and that's kind of enough of the introduction. What I'll suggest as we go through this is I want this to be interactive. So if we go to a certain point in the conversation, you have something you'd like to share, come off of mute and say something, and I'll let you have, pose a question or a comment, and then, we'll continue on that way. There's no formality in this. Is that all good for everybody? All right. I see most of y'all are on mute, so that's great. All right. So first of all, let me switch us into the view that I want so you can see what we're doing. There we go. And I'm going to play it. All right. So authorpreneurship, everybody can see that, I hope. If you can't, get off of mute and holler. So authorpreneurship, and I call this the 101 because it is the basic approach, talking about developing the right attitude to become an authorpreneur. But the question raises, well, what is an authorpreneur? You've already seen that, so we don't need that. All right, we're going to be talking the agenda. This is just nothing more than I did in my previous events, but it's going to break it up into 3 sections. And it's going to talk about the secret sauce. Marketing is more than selling. Everybody thinks it's all about selling. Selling is a byproduct of marketing, by the way. I spent 30 years in corporate America, so marketing is kind of my background. And number 3, I read a great book back in the late 80s, early 90s called Guerrilla Marketing. I don't know if any of y'all have ever read that if you've been in business. but it applies fantastically for authors. So that's kind of where we're going to go with this. So if everybody's ready, let's start on. All right. Secret sauce, key ingredient. Guess what? It's you. Everybody thinks that there's a secret, there's a magic formula, there's a shortcut to selling more books. But there's not, because it's really up to you. And every one of you have something inside of you that the secret sauce exists. You just have to be able to be brave enough to start using your secret sauce and to begin to exercise that. And the more experienced you become, the more confident you will be. So preparation and perseverance nurtures confidence. And that's just where the secret sauce key ingredient will come from. Does everybody understand what I mean by that? When you're preparing yourself as an author, you have to ask certain questions, because you're going to be asked questions along the way. And that starts with being in front of agents, publishers, being asked about your books when you're out at an event or a workshop, or a conference, and you have to be prepared. How many of y'all have been to an event and you've seen another author, when they're asked to read, they look like they just have never seen their own book and they stutter through their book reading? If you know you have a book reading, you think it might be a good idea to practice reading the portion of the book you want to read, and perseverance. Well, you know what? We only get better through experience. The more you do it, you'll correct the mistakes that you make early on. You'll get more comfortable being in front of people, and you'll actually stop stuttering along the way. And I don't mean you literally will stutter, but we can often fumble when somebody walks up and says, "Tell me about your book," and especially if you're in front of an editor, not an editor, excuse me, an agent, and the agent says, "Why should I select you to represent?" Why? What is it about your book? How many of y'all have had that experience? Has anybody here sat in front of an agent? Yeah. And Jack, yeah. How did that go for you the first time you met with an agent? Were you comfortable? Just click your mute button.
Sorry, helps if you unmute.
There you go.
I don't know that you're ever comfortable. It's a kind of a tension-filled experience, but hey, you get through it.
Yeah, excellent.
Stressful.
And the more you did it, the more comfortable you became, as the conversation got going.
Well, yeah, I kind of done a lot of that before anyway, so.
Yeah. Well, good. And you're just reinforcing what, I'm trying to share I'm seeing certain faces and their eyes are like the deer in front of the headlights kind of thing. And I know that can happen. What is very true, and I use this analogy, okay? Think about when we all were back in the old sock hop days and we used to go to the high school dances, or, wallflowers never make it to the dance floor. Have you ever noticed that there are guys and girls that are too nervous because afraid to ask somebody to dance, or whether they're afraid that somebody will ask them to dance? They literally are trying to blend into the background at the dance hall, or the gymnasium. But the fact of the matter is they have no chance. They have no one to dance with. It's either they're afraid to ask somebody to dance, or they make it obvious that they don't want somebody really to ask them because they don't know how they're going to feel about it. They feel shy, awkward, and excluded at a party. So don't settle for being a two-dimensional wallflower. That two-dimensional wallflower is that person who backs up to the wall and literally becomes two-dimensional like wallpaper and can't come off the wall. Blossom into a multi-dimensional authorpreneur. And that just takes experience and time. And sometimes you just have to tell your gut, hey, we got to do this. I spent all these months, all these weeks, all this time writing this book. But I need to make that mean something. I need it to have value. And so you got to tell your inner self, this is something we have to do. Let's talk about the word authorpreneur in the first place so you can think about it a minute. Obviously, an author is someone who writes books. Guess what? As a profession, authors don't just write books to sit on your own bookshelf. Who just wants to write a book to get it printed and put it on your own bookshelf or maybe hand out to one or two people? We want to sell books. Is that right? Anybody here that doesn't want to sell any books? It is a profession. Entrepreneur is a person who organizes and operates a business. Being an author, by even IRS standards, you are self-employed. You are your own contractor. You operate a business. And in doing so, you're taking on greater than normal financial risk in order to do so. You're a promoter in the entertainment industry. You're not just a creator, but you're also a promoter. And I think that is something that we often forget. We have to learn how to promote the books that we write. Writing books is no longer viewed as an avocation, but a vocation. And if the difference is an avocation is nothing more than, it's a little side hobby. It's that minor occupation. Some people have hobbies. And maybe you might write some jingles and write some blogs and call that, writing, and that's fine. But that's more for avocation than a vocation. When you write a book, anybody here not want to at least make a little bit of money, at least want to sell a few books so that it's helping to pay for some of what you went through to get there? Does anybody here feel totally self-sufficient financially that they're just writing the books for the sake of writing the books and they plan on giving their books away? Okay. All right. So a vocation is a strong feeling of suitability for a particular career or occupation, a trade or profession regarding as particularly worthy and of value to others, requiring great dedication. It does take dedication. You have to make a commitment to what you're doing. Beyond honing your own skills, consider these biblical principles as practical advice for growing as an entrepreneur. Proverbs says, as iron sharpens iron, so one man or woman sharpens another. Guess what? Authors, the successful authors are networking authors. You guys obviously are, because you've networked to be here. You're listening to other authors. You're getting advice from other authors. You're sharing information to help one another. That is what authors need to do to help and support one another. So that's some beginning great aspects of an entrepreneur. He doesn't try to do this all on his own. He solicits help. It would be like, and I'll tell you the difference this way. There are a handful of very unique individuals that can write their own book and edit their own book. So when the publisher sees it, they know they have nothing to do but just print it. But how many of those do you think really exist? How many of y'all know and understand the value of having a good publisher, a good cover design person, having somebody that's in the PR department, or a publicist? It takes a teamwork. So as iron sharpens iron, we need one another to sharpen one another. Ecclesiastes speaks of it this way: though one may be overpowered, two can defend themselves. But you know what? A cord of 3 strands is not easily broken. years ago in my corporate experience, I used to go into rope making facilities, and I was always amazed to see the yarn spools that would be that single strand that was feeding into the machine that would be wound together and then corded together and then spiraled together to create rope that could pull tons and tons and tons. Well, the same thing holds true in using that concept as an author. It's that teamwork element. Proverbs also says, plans fail for lack of counsel, but with many advisors, they succeed. The one thing that we all need to be able to do is to be humble enough to ask for help, and don't try to go down this uncharted path without help and some guidance, because there are a lot of authors out there that are glad to lend a hand. They're already down the path a good ways, and they're now putting their hand back to say, hey, let me help you over the bumpy road. Let me help you know what's ahead. So do not be afraid to ask for counsel. And I'll give you another really good example of that is in the editing process. How many of y'all have had your book, edited just as it's going into the publisher, and the editor for the publisher says your book will be better if you kill chapter 1 of your story, or if you swap this, or if you change this character and make it into another one? And how many of y'all sat there and were like frightened because they just killed your baby, but they're trying to make it better for you? I can remember that happening, and it blew my mind, but I understood eventually. So, and then John Donne wrote this: no man is an island entire of itself. Every man is a piece of a continent, a part of the main. Therefore, never sin to know, for whom the bell tolls, it tolls for thee. Famous quote, but it bears, for all of us to be aware of. Anybody have a comment or question at this point?
Well, my experience was that with my first book, all of my books before the one I'm just trying to get published now have been nonfiction. And my first book was for parents of children about sharing their faith with God. And my experience was that the author or the publisher, the editor that I had with the publisher came in telling me that they would like for me to change all of the words where I used the pronoun he for God, to change it to God, or to reframe the sentence so that I did not have to use the word he. And my first reaction was, that doesn't bother me. And then I decided, well, if one person picks up the book and opens it and sees that it's that way, that the pronoun for he, for God, is there, and won't read it, then I'd better do some changing. And we did.
Good example.
We changed all the pronouns back, reshuffle the sentences. And it's surprising how easy it was. I mean, not real easy, but because there was a lot of it to do. But it was surprising that we were able to do that. And I think that's true even with the novel, that like Robin is so good giving us the chance or telling us, you've used this word too many times.
Right.
That's one of her favorite things. And it is easy to change things around if you just let yourself go and let yourself do it.
Exactly. No, it's an excellent point. Excellent example. Somebody else have something to say? Go ahead. Becky?
I wrote a book. My first book was a children's book. It was called My Grandma's Crazy, and the publisher loved it. The editor called me and she says, I think you should change it from grandma to a grandpa. I don't think that's, I think the grandmas will be insulted. I said, it's a tongue-in-cheek, humorous book. And I'm a grandmother. I'm actually making fun of myself. And I said, I don't know how to write about a grandpa. And she says, well, you compare the two grandmas, and the one grandma is always doing fun stuff and being crazy, and the other grandma's so serious. I said, but both grandmas love their grandchildren. I'm not insulting the other one. She goes, but the other grandma is only wearing like plain flowered dresses and sensible shoes. And I said, ma'am, I'm comparing two grandmothers. One wears jeans and boots and the other wears flowered dresses and sensible shoes. That's the premise of the book. I said, I'll think about it. My daughter said, are you kidding? Mom, that's crazy. You don't change it. And I called the publisher and he laughed. He said, no, do not change it. I love it the way it is. Mm-hmm. And I was thinking the editor was sitting there in flowered dresses with sensible shoes. So what can I do?
Well, editors are not always right. So always remember that. But at least it made you stop to think and to be able to explain why you held the position that you did. Excellent example.
I worked with the illustrator to make sure that the other grandma looked sweet and, just she wasn't outgoing like the other grandma. But honestly, I didn't change it to crazy grandpa.
But you said this, and this is important for them to understand. Authorpreneurs take ownership and have a control position on all of that they do. Now, working with some publishers, that seems to be almost a daunting experience, but to be able to defend your positions where you can argue what you did, Becky, in a very positive way, but to explain your position. Sometimes you win, sometimes you don't, but you have to have that confidence to do that. I couldn't
have promoted the book any other way because I go in, I'm myself when I'm reading to kids or talking to groups. I'm the crazy grandma. So there you go.
There you go. I wish my wife was here. She'd be chuckling. Trust me. She'll have to.
It's available on Amazon.com.
Send me a link and I'll get a copy for Connie. That'll be great. Miss Ann, did you have something to say? I didn't know if you're unmuted or not.
Well, I've done self-publishing, but I've always had to promote my book, and now I'm on a sequel. And I don't know if you remember, but it is a horse-themed book. Yes. So I have a target audience. And although I'm not finished with the book, I'm already thinking of ways to promote the book and see if I can't do a better job than I did last time of promoting it. But I did try with publishers, but partly because of my age, and I just wanted to get the book out there and didn't want to go through all the other. So that's basically where I am, but I'm very interested in what you're talking about. And like I said earlier, I have learned to listen, and I have learned that I don't know everything just because I taught 6th grade language arts.
Yeah.
So I'm in a writing group in South Carolina now. We meet at the Pat Conroy Center, and some of the people in my group knew Pat Conroy, so he is like the god, sort of. And I was very intimidated when I went into the group, but they've accepted me and encouraged me. Right. And again, like I said, I have listened. And I've thought about the things they've said and how it would relate to other people. So I think my biggest thing right now is I'm just still learning.
Well, you know what? Let me say this, especially self-publishing, where you're taking control. Self-publishing, and when you're doing it right, is actually one of the most difficult and daunting tasks that you can do, because a good book still has certain steps it has to go through to be successful. But you also have to define what success is for you as an author, whether you're self-published or whether you are published through a publisher, traditional or otherwise. You have to determine what you view as success. Do not let other people define success for you. And I think that that's important. If doors open, Robin's been very fortunate where doors have opened for her.
Mm-hmm.
But I would imagine when, Robin, you first started, the last thing you had on your mind was writing for a movie script. It just happened to go, to work for you.
Yeah, no, that was totally unexpected. And there's always that little voice in the back of your head saying, wouldn't it be cool if that happened? But yeah, I never expected it. I mean, my goal was to just write books that would educate kids, and now it's not only going to educate them, it's going to entertain them. So
yeah,
that's
great. And all of you are you're actually touching on what authorpreneurship's all about. You're experiencing it without understanding some of the aspects of it. And the way that you're defending yourself, and I say defending in a positive way, is the beginning of knowing that you've got it inside yourself to be able to be that authorpreneur to help you sell and to prepare to go further with your books than you might ever think you could. So let's move on. Anybody else have anything to say before I go forward? Okay. So here's a very simple principle, which is basically where we just kind of were talking about. Authorpreneurs know why. There's some key why questions that they understand and commit inside themselves. Knowing the answers to the key why questions grow your confidence as an authorpreneur. Full confidence in the answers to these why questions will help navigate you through the critical choices all authors face. And again, this goes back to what, Becky, you said you went through. You knew why you wanted to defend the grandma side of things. And you knew why you wanted to be, what was important to you in the publishing of your books at this stage in life. And Robin, if Sue Ann Taylor had said, I want your book, but I want to do all of this rework on your characters, you'd have to be confident to know, yes or no. You'd have to make that call. It'd be hard to say no in many cases, but there's probably a line that could be drawn. So the question is why did you invest time and money to write your books? And yes, has anybody been able to write a book without spending a nickel? If you do, please let me know how it's done. So Miss Delia, you wrote your book without spending any money, and it's been published without spending any money.
Well, these were my nonfiction books.
Okay.
And I spent money, of course, on computer, on paper, on ink, that sort of thing. But I was fortunate enough to get with a publisher that I just kept. In fact, it got to where all I had to do was to call the person I'd worked with and say, I have an idea for this book. And they would take the idea in. She would say, or he would say, well, send me a paragraph about it or whatever. And they'd take it in and they would approve it, and then I'd write it. Mm-hmm. So it was really hard to change to fiction, where I needed to get the whole book written before I could even approach anybody.
Absolutely. Well,
but it was many years ago. My first book was in 1981.
Wow.
81 or 82, I forget. And I've written about 25 of those.
Absolutely. And you know what? It was a lot easier back 30 years ago than it is today. There's more avenues open to be published today, but it requires a lot more challenge because the marketplace is so much bigger too. So that's a good example. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. But you have to make sure you understand, why did you invest the time and money? And we do understand that time is money. So when we write a book, how many hours or weeks or months have we invested in sitting at a typewriter or a word processor or your computer, or if you're really old-fashioned, handwriting it? You know, how much of your time did you put in there? How much of your family time and relation time did you sacrifice? That can be computed into the value that has as well. But that is the internal motivation of an authorpreneur. That is where the drive comes from inside of an authorpreneur. Why will others invest time and money in your book is the next question. And this is an important one. It's not why you wrote it in of itself, but why are people going to read it? What value does it have so that somebody will plop down a $10 bill or a $20 bill or whatever it is to read your book and to spend the time reading your book? Unless you're one of those very gifted savants that can speed read a book in 15 minutes, everybody has to invest a few hours of their time to read any particular book. So the question is, what can you say to a reader to help them to understand why would they want to invest their time and money into reading your book? And that you have to make sure you deliver on that. In that particular question, guess who's going to be part of that equation? Your editors, your agents, your publishers. You've got, when you're presenting to a publisher, and Ms. Delia, you mentioned this, that you presented in your nonfiction books, your presentation of your synopsis proposal for your books. Well, when you submit a proposal, what are you doing? You're giving the publisher the reason to say yes, rather than say no. And we have to go through a lot of that exercise very early on in the book writing process. The same thing goes with our literary agents, if we're fortunate enough to have them, or to the acquisition editors at publishers. What about book clubs and book retailers? You know, when you're addressing book clubs, these people assign, how many of y'all belong to a book club? Anybody raise your hand? Yeah. All right. Y'all have to agree on a book that you're going to read, and you usually do it weeks or months in advance. Am I right? So everybody has to agree on why I'm willing to invest the time and the money to read the book for the book club. Well, if you're the author submitting your book to the book club, it's like writing a synopsis or a proposal. Why should this book club, why should these people that could be 12 or 20 or 30 people read your book and enjoy it? So you have to be able to present that aspect. And then the book retailers, that's the biggest challenge. I spend an awful lot of time promoting my book through independent bookstores. That's my strength. But I have to go to, when I'm introducing myself to a new bookstore, a bookstore owner or the manager in there, or an events coordinator, I have to provide a synopsis of my book so that they understand, because they don't know me, they don't know my book right off the bat. I'm fortunate if I get the call from a bookstore, that can happen, but you still have to be able to sell your book and help them to understand why they're willing to invest their time and their money in supporting your book. Excuse me. And then the last one is this. You're at a bookstore event, or you're at a book festival, and somebody walks up to you. What are you going to say to those people? How are you going to get their attention to stop and to invest in your book? You're not selling why you wrote it. You're selling it on the premise of why they should open it and take a look at it, because that's their purchase mechanism in it. They like you. They might love your smile. They love your personality. But in the end, what's in it for me when I open the book? How many of y'all have had great conversations with potential readers? They'll look and stare at your book for a moment, hold the conversation, and then they'll just kind of like, well, maybe I'll think about it, and they might maybe say, well, if you got a business card or a bookmark, I'll see about it. But you know what? That's a comeback that never comes back. So selling these people as quick as you can, and hopefully they're buying your books, is part of that motivation that you need to understand. Your why questions will shape, and it should shape, your what answers. So what about your book will pique the curiosity of others? What is it inside of your book and about your book that will get them to get into conversation about your book? Well, y'all have done some homework. I know you have. Some of you maybe haven't done it yet, but there are some of you that's done this before and you don't realize you're doing it. When you're at it doesn't matter, whatever kind of author event or book event, and somebody will look at you and say, tell me about your book, or you ask them the question, can I tell you something about my book? Do you realize that you have about 15 or 20 seconds, 30 seconds tops to captivate the interest of that particular person? You don't have time to get into a 10-minute dissertation about your book. Now, we love our books, and we think that everything in our books is valuable, but that reader needs a hook so that they will buy into proposing a question back to you that says this is what every author wants to hear at an event. Well, tell me more. So you have to have this moment, and most all of you know what an elevator pitch is. Am I right? Anybody not know what an elevator pitch is? In the industry, it's pretty.
No.
You don't, and an elevator pitch.
I don't think.
Yeah, an elevator pitch is you talking about your book in the time it would take to meet a potential reader as you two walk into an elevator and you take the ride up a couple of floors in the elevator and leave. Because by the time the door of the elevator opens up, you've either won their attention or not. Well, I challenge you that in most events today, people are being inundated with information. They need a quick hit, and I call it the elevator door pitch. The elevator door pitch. And I had one of the authors at the events, when I said I was looking for a 200 character pitch, short pitch, they thought it was 200 words. And I said, 200 words is not bad. That's your second pitch. But a 200 character pitch means every letter is one of those characters. So if y'all look there, this is an example. In Sanctuary, my first book, a publishing executive and his wife leave Atlanta to retire in Shiloh, a small South Georgia town near their childhood roots. But tragedy, dark secrets, and scandal await their arrival. Okay, that's a quick hit, less than 200 characters. It takes all of about 10 seconds to say it. And what you're looking for when you're saying this to a particular reader or an editor or whomever is you're looking at their eyes. You're looking square in their eyes. Because you'll know by the time you finish saying the last word, that person is interested or they got that glazed over look and they're already looking elsewhere. Okay? But what you're trying to hear them say to you, okay, and here's the most difficult thing all of us do. We want to fill silence. When you're done giving your pitch, just enough information that's the worm on the hook, stand there in silence, because what is that other person possibly doing it as long as silence is in the room? Anybody have an idea?
Thinking about something else?
Well, they could be, but you know what they could be doing? They're actually diagnosing what you just said. Mm-hmm. And what do you hope how do you want the silence to be broken? You want the other person to say, hey, please tell me more. Because guess what that just gave you permission to do? ramble on about your book, and, tell enough now to get them to open the book. And it's at that stage, hopefully, if you have a book with you, you actually are handing them a book or a bookmark that has some information about your book, and put it in their hands. Because what happens if a reader grabs your book or grabs your one sheet? Okay, what are they doing? What do you think, Becky?
They're thinking they're going to buy it.
Yeah, they're now making a purchasing decision. It's important. I wrote an article, called "The First Page Matters," but I covered it that think about when you walk into a bookstore. What's in a bookstore? It's an obvious
Millions
answer. Yeah, millions and millions and millions of books. Okay, so when these people, and I've done so many, and I'm sure Delia, you over your years, you know what I'm talking about. I'm looking at your own bookshelf. Somebody comes in and starts staring at the bookshelves. They're looking for their next read, but all they get to see is typically the spine of the book is all they get to see at first. And then once something catches them, they'll pull that spine out. So what's the first thing they really do see? The book cover.
The cover.
The cover. The cover's job is to do one thing. Get them to do one or two things immediately. Flip the book over, because what's on the back cover on most good books? The synopsis and a little bit of maybe a blurb or two about the book. Because then when they've done that, they're hopefully going to open the book. And then what is the most important page in the entire book?
The first few pages.
Matter of fact, I would even say the first page. The first page. In today's society, people's attention are grabbed in how much time in the choice of words and setup of your story shows up on the first page. Because I'll tell you this, if you happen to be standing with somebody and you're talking a little bit about your book, and that person has looked at the front cover, flipped to the back cover while you're talking, and they've reviewed the back cover and has now opened the book to the first page, the minute that they flip to page 2, you've got them. Your success rate of having your book sold just skyrocketed to the chance where they, and your next word should be, and by the way, I'll be glad to autograph that before you leave today. Please take it up to the cashier, And so it's important to think about those little things, but it's that short elevator door pitch, what I call, is your best friend when you're competing at workshops and you're competing at book festivals with other authors. Some of you have been with me when I had the joy of being in Canton last summer. Miss Ann, I know you were there. Delia, were you? I think you were at one of them too. And Robin, you know what I did. I would ask the simple question, what do you like to read? Can I tell you about my Southern fiction? And I would give this quick, something similar to that. And what would end up happening? We'd get into conversation. A lot of authors, I won't say most, a lot of authors sit behind the table, behind their books, and never get out from behind their table. They never engage the readers. They're just waiting and hoping that somebody's going to come up and ask the question. You have to have the confidence to be able to step out and get the permission to tell them that, the hook. So that's important. That is, I spend a lot of time with that because I think it's important, because you have, in today's society, with all of the books that are out there, you've got all of about 30 seconds to win somebody. And you have to be able to recognize when you have a potential reader who really doesn't want your book because they're into biographies or fantasies and you're trying to sell Southern fiction, or, they're looking into horse books and you're selling, something else. You just have to be able to be aware of that quickly. All right. Anybody have any questions about that? It was part of your homework because.
No, but I do have.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, I do have a comment. Mike did sell more books than anybody in that group on those days that he was at the author booth. So there is a lot of validity to what he is saying.
Thank you.
I was one of those people that sat well beside the table,
think
but
did
I
too.
watched Mike all that day to see how he was selling his books, and it was helpful.
Well, Miss Ann,
Now, another one
yeah, go ahead, Robin.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Another person, Becky, I remember she came to one of the author booths and she was dressed
Like crazy grandma.
like crazy grandma, and she really did
I think I
jump
sold
out
a
there like you, Mike, and really promoted her book.
I think I
to
sold
the-
a couple and I gave a couple away.
Yeah, so
Well,
there's so much validity in what you're saying.
What will sell you, and Becky, I love the fact that you dressed up like a crazy grandma. It's branding. Y'all, does everybody understand what I mean by branding? Robin's, yeah, you know, okay. I know Jack, he shook his head. He's been around a long time. It's something that your books reflect it, your advertisements reflect it, your social media reflects it, your web page reflects it, your bookmarks reflect it. It is something that is eye-catching about what you write about, that is in everything you do and how you express yourself visually and audibly. When I go to, you know, how many of y'all follow golf and know who Tiger Woods? Tiger Woods on every Sunday. Jack, you follow golf at all?
A little bit, not a lot, but
Okay. When I ask you to describe Tiger Woods, what do you think? What colors do you associate of clothes with Tiger Woods?
Can't remember.
for some reason red, but I don't
Red.
know why.
Yeah, that's perfect. Every Sunday, the last day of every tournament, he wears black slacks and a red shirt. That is his trademark. It's his branding. And I guess it goes back to, you know, it's intimidating in some ways. Robin's been around me enough to see this. When I do events, if you look at my author events, I wear some form of red coloring that matches my book covers and the themes of my story. I wear my hat in a lot of events when I'm outdoors. Now, I wore my straw hat when I was up in Canton, but I've got a brown leather hat that I wear a lot. It's part of the branding, so people identify you in a crowd. Not that I'm looking for attention, but it helps for somebody to stop. When you get your posters put up or your handouts, they should be able to say, hey, I've seen this before. Where have I seen this? Social media or where? That's part of your branding. So that's all part of that. So I'm not going to embarrass y'all too much at this moment, but I will say this, going back to your pitches. Okay, show and tell builds confidence amongst friends. If you can't mess up in front of your fellow authors, you're sure not going to want to do it in front of strangers. So, you know, who's willing to share your elevator pitch? Did anybody do your homework?
I did. I'll be happy to.
Go for it.
Raven Transcending Fear is part memoir, part self-help guide. It's a story of my childhood abuse and diving deep into my own terror before ultimately getting comfortable with fear and transcending it. None of us are born fearful. Though I've had loving people in my life, my mother was abusive and enabled others to traumatize me. To get drugs, my mother allowed strangers to assault my 11-year-old body sexually. She then left my sister and me alone on the streets of Albuquerque, New Mexico. Through my relationships, I learned valuable life lessons that helped me come to terms and overcome my fear. As I continue to grow, I understood that we are each responsible for our own lives and the choices we make. In accepting responsibility for my choices, I learned that in the past, I was giving my power away. But now I can choose to take it back and create the life I want. Through this memoir, readers will go on a journey with me as I move from a life ruled by fear to fearlessness.
Okay, Terry, can I give a comment? Remember the hook idea first, okay? Repeat your last two sentences.
But now I can choose to take it back and create the life I want. Through this memoir, readers go through a journey with me as I move from a life ruled by fear to fearlessness.
Where you start to say, in this memoir, and then what you follow right there, that alone is your opening hook. All the other stuff explains, it's a synopsis of the story. That those last 25, 30 words is what you want to start with. And then you can explain a little bit more as they ask questions and want to know more.
My door pitch is one line. Raven Transcending Fear is about overcoming fear and limiting beliefs, illustrated by my journey through childhood sexual abuse and abandonment into being my authentic self.
There you go. Okay. And that's fine too. There you go. That's great. That's distilled. Who else was ready to do it? Somebody else had their hand. Becky, did you? Oh, Jack. Go ahead, Jack. Unmute.
Got to unmute. A lot of you have heard this, but when cyber consultant Adam Braxton is asked by a secret group of scientists to find a traitor in their midst, he and his team are thrown into a deadly game of deceit and revenge. The Jason betrayal weaves contemporary events and cutting-edge technology in a nonstop international thriller that will challenge your understanding of the relationship between politics and science.
You know, the reader, Jack, and that's good, but I'll tell you what I would do. I would pack that down to your that last first full sentence. And I remember exactly where the word was. But because at that particular moment, you could pause and see if your reader's still engaged with you at that particular moment. And if I had your pitch in front of me, I would tell you, it's those first 30 words, 25 words that is the key. And if you stop and pause at that point, because I know you want to tell more, all of us do, but we have to gain permission to do it. Because once they give permission, what are the probabilities of somebody reading your book? They just went way up. So yeah, I mean, it's excellent choice. Anybody else? Becky?
Oh, I've got one I'm working on.
Okay.
Today's grandma is trendy, fun, and on the go. Join this crazy grandma and her grandsons as they have crazy fun together. Something like that.
Yeah, and again, that would be in my book. You know, this is a journey for crazy grandmas. I'd love to tell you more. You know, and that should be, in that kind of story, that would be almost sufficient. Antonia, did you have one?
Yes. Reframing the Playing Field is an inspiring story about what happens when someone shifts focus from what has been destroyed to what she can create.
Excellent. That's excellent, because now what is the reader apt to do? The potential readers to say, well, that sounds interesting. Tell me more. Okay. If they phased out, they phased out. But you've just called out the potential person who's not interested versus somebody who would. That's excellent. Very good. Ms. Terry, did you have one? Did we get you to do one? I got everybody. I'm trying to look at. All right, we're going to have a chance at the end for anybody else all of a sudden gets, brave enough to move forward. Ms. Delia, yes.
I have one.
Yes.
Or do you want it now?
You
or
can,
later?
That's up to you.
Let's hear it.
While
We find Amanda moving from Atlanta to a small town of 92 people in North Dakota. She discovers a completely different world of gravel roads and old crank party line telephone systems. Mixed with this, a rancher horticulturist, Bill, who grew up near the small town but spends several months elsewhere. Will Amanda and Bill reveal their secrets to each other, and will their relationship grow? An older woman, Miss Emma, brings knowledge of life and the world far beyond her education and travels.
That's actually a very good back cover blurb, synopsis for somebody reading that. What I would suggest as a challenge would be is for you, when you're in public or in a situation talking to somebody, condense that down to about 20 key words just to get them the hook, the gist of it. And then once they've bought in to say, tell me more, you can hand them the back of the book, which has got that, and you can actually talk them right through it. That's a great, what I would call book back cover blurb. That's excellent.
Okay.
Excellent. Okay. And, hey, I'm not perfect about all this, but there are just some human nature things that we just should try to think about for ourselves. How many of you have stood before somebody at a festival and that person goes on and on and on about their book? And how long did it take you for your brain to kind of start to shut down, but you're trying to remain polite, you're trying to find the exit door, so think about their readers in the same way. It's no harm in trying to figure out who really is interested in your book right up front. It'll save you a lot of grief. All right.
It makes me think of, when we're giving presentations or teaching, you're a teacher, at the beginning, you got to have a hook. It's really a hook.
Yeah.
To get them interested in your book.
Yeah. I started this whole Authorpreneurship, who wants to sell more books. That is the gist of it all. So now you're at least curious, and we'll see what's happening in the middle.
Right.
All right. Session 2. Excuse me. All right. For authors today, marketing is more than some corporate concept or smart sounding buzzword. How many are afraid of the idea of marketing? Does anybody love marketing? Do you just embrace it? You think it's cool? Or is it something you're not sure?
I don't think it's fun, but it's hard.
Yeah.
I don't like it at all.
Well, it's scary, but it's not. You know what?
I was told too many times when I was doing workshops for my nonfiction books. I was doing, not for the books, but I was doing workshops on the themes, that I was just trying to sell my books.
Well,
and I don't want to appear in workshops that I'm just trying to sell the books. So now I'm having trouble. I think I can do a better job in fiction because I am trying to sell the book then.
Well, you opened up a segue that's perfect. Selling is a component of marketing. It's the end result. It's the goal in the end of marketing. A marketing department or a marketing head in a corporation works with the sales department, but the sales department loves the marketing department because they make selling easier. So yes, marketing is not to be confused with the actual act of selling your book. That actually should be the easiest thing to do. Marketing is the most important one. It is a necessity, and it's as old and tried and true as the concept of capitalism, which dates all the way back to the days of cavemen bartering and swapping goods thousands of years ago. When a guy is swapping a buffalo hide for, 2 baskets of corn, well, who's establishing value is important at that particular moment of the bartering system. And that's really what swapping money and swapping a book is all about. It's establishing the value. Here's why. There's an ocean of books to compete against today. Has anybody seen the statistics on the number of books that come out in any given year? It's approaching 3 million books in the world every year being published right now. Amazon has turned on a spigot like there's no tomorrow. New books are flowing into the daily ocean, every moment. There's just flooding into the ocean daily. Good news is there's never been a better time to be an author. There's more publishing options. 30, 40 years ago, Miss Delia, your publishing options were far more limited than they are today.
I will say that today.
Yeah,
they were more limited. They were more limited, but yet you you could go directly to the publisher more than you can today.
And yes, and so many cases that's true. And you had more reception of the agents had a different role they do today. But the point is that there's more avenues also to sell your books. 30, 40 years ago, the internet didn't exist. There was no Amazon and all these others. The bad news, all these new options and avenues result in more and more books rushing onto the marketplace. So with all the sea of books out there, just close your mind a minute and just visualize books floating on the top of the waves of this ocean. It's turbulent. How are you going to get your book to stand out in the middle of the storm of books, just, you know, in this big sea of books? How are you going to stand out? And that's what marketing's challenge is all about. Effective marketing stimulates interest and creates value to justify the money and time required to read your book. Marketing is a process, but it's also an attitude. And that's something, you know, you don't have to go get a marketing degree because it's a simple process. And all of us just need to adopt the attitude that I'm involved in the presenting of my books so that they are the most sellable books I can make them, so that the process of selling is as easy as I can make it. Merchandising, advertising, and selling are all part of the process. When you finished writing your book and you handed it to the publisher, did you think your job was done? Today, it doesn't exist that way. Every publisher, and it doesn't matter if you are with HarperCollins, St. Martin's Press, or you're self-publishing, you've got a responsibility in that process. A well-written, quality book greases the wheels of marketing, though. Delia Owens, Where Crawdads Sing, is a fabulously well-written book. It captured the minds and hearts of literally millions. She's been at the top sellers list of books for the last 2.5 years. And she started at 70 writing her first fiction book. She got into the right place. Now, from marketing, her biggest thing is somehow, some way, her publisher got her with Reese Witherspoon, who bought her book for the movie rights. And Oprah Winfrey fell in love with Delia Owens, and the book took off. Merchandising includes all of your book format options. So think about today, and again, versus 30 years ago. Ebooks, audiobooks versus paperback and hardcover books. You know, those are all options that we have accessibility to today. Who would have thought 5 years ago you could have done a reasonable, relatively inexpensive audiobook? They're available to us if we choose to do it, but you have to have a good book and a good narrator. But that's out there. And Kindle's the same way. Merchandising includes all of those options. The exterior cover images. How many of y'all have looked at a table full of books and can pretty much identify books that you probably are not going to touch just by looking at the book covers versus which ones draw your attention? That's so important. The layout and content, the minute you open the book and start leafing through it, layout and format are so huge. You need to be able to make that decision. And when I started getting involved in this, when I started doing my books, I didn't realize the value of making the paper color choices, the font choices, all those little things inside the book make a difference for people when they're buying the book. This is where branding begins, is making all of those decisions. What the customer first sees is what branding is all about. It makes it so that they're drawn in to the images and the way things look on your book or books. Advertising first identifies your audience and how to best engage them. Now, nobody loves having to pay for advertising, And I'm one of those that, I've done my form of advertising, or I've been with the publisher when they're doing advertising. It is an expensive proposition. It is kind of rolling the dice, but advertising, if it's done right, can help boost book sales. But advertising informs and stirs your audience to act. Selling involves more monetary transaction. Going back to what we said before, if you've done the branding and the advertising and you've made all those and got a good book, the selling part is actually the easiest thing, because the person is willing to pull out their credit card or their wallet to purchase the book because they see the value on the surface right away. Not to mention the fact when you're looking like a crazy grandma with a pretty smile and you got a good pitch, that's part of that branding. So that's important. It's the word of mouth value. How many know that the best review comes audibly from your friends and readers of your books? How many promote that? I mean, I hope so. Okay. Think about your reviews. Reviews are kind of good, but there's so many. You have to be careful with your reviews. That's all I have to say on the subject for the moment. Reviews are important. They just have to be done right by the right people, or it can be a challenge for you. Because remember this, your book has to live up to the reviews. There's a lot of books that get thrown out there that their friends and family just can't say a word bad about it. It's all 5-star. And, and they make it sound like the book is the next Margaret Mitchell epic. And they open up the book, get a chapter in, and you get this nasty gram later. So be careful with that. But buyers become your best audience members. And so once you sell a book, you're not done marketing. There's things that you want to be thinking about. Speaking about selling, newsflash, whether you're a seasoned, outgoing personality or a shy, reserved introvert, the secret sauce of success is you. It's just a reminder. You need to be able to follow back up with as many readers of your books as possible, just like you did in the beginning, to build your platform. That's a buzzword we don't have time to get too much into, but you want to build the tribe, the village of readers out there who are talking about your book and sharing it with others. After the purchase of the books, the best form of advertising is word of mouth. Whether that's in written reviews or best of all is word of mouth. Them talking about it is the best. And I'm moving a little bit along just so we don't get too dragged out here. After the sale, marketing seeks to build upon an author's platform of enthusiastic followers, eagerly asking about the next book. How many of y'all have put out your book and the first question that somebody says, either right then or they've seen you at another event, that, oh, when are you putting out your next book? What's next? What author has only put out one book and says, well, that's all I wrote. I'm done.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And now I'm on the sequel.
There you go. Yeah.
It was asked for.
Yeah.
So I'm on it.
Well, I'll tell you a secret myself, Ann. Sanctuary was it was my bucket list thing to write a book for my, as a legacy of my grandkids. I wrote Sanctuary, went through all of the processes, got it out there. And right after it was going through the publishing aspect of it, I was already being asked, what's your sequel going to be? And when is it going to be available? Right away. Readers started to ask the same questions. And that's where Testament came from. And then now I had to put what I call the capstone on my series. And I just finished putting out Purgatory. I never planned on doing this as an ongoing thing. It's just become that way. So yeah, you're 100% correct. So it's a wonderful feeling when somebody asks that, tell me about your other books. while being encouraged to willingly direct friends and family to also purchase the book, whether by word of mouth, blogging, and of course, through posting reviews. Finally, marketing's effectiveness that ultimately determines the life expectancy and audience reach of a book. These are the terms that mean the most to authors. Your tail of your book, your T-A-I-L, not the tail, T-A-L-E, but the T-A-I-L in marketing is how long will that book continue to sell? How far will it reach? Did you write it for a regional marketplace, but all of a sudden you're finding out it's being sold in Texas and in California and in New Hampshire, and you get these surprises? That puts a smile to your face. I still scratch my head when I hear where Sanctuary has sold, because I don't know how it got there. It just did. So having the long tail and the broad audience for your book, it talks about how long it's read. One of my good friends that I've gotten to know is Terry Kay. Terry Kay has been writing about as long as you have, Delia. He started writing in the late 70s and early 80s, and he's got about 14 books, I think it is, that he has written in his career. And I just finished reading To Dance with the White Dog to some folks at a retirement home last spring. And I had somebody ask me if I was familiar with Shadow Song, okay, and Taking Miss Lottie Home. Well, these are books that were written in the 80s and early 90s, and they're still being read today and ordered today. So there's some long tails. Wouldn't we all like to know that our books are still being read 20, 30 years after we've written them? However, let's not forget marketing relies upon a well-written end product, offering value and a message an audience will be drawn to read. That still is the end thing for an author. Your first job is to write a great book. And I'm not here to tell you how to do that, but I know what one looks like when I see one. Everybody agree with that? We may not want to tell other people how to write a book, but we sure can tell when we look at your book if it's a good book. We just may not say so. But we're being honest. And I say not good, meaning, what its reach and depth will be. So what you're creating with all of this, you're hoping for, is a bandwagon. You don't see bandwagons like you did years and years ago. But, when Barnum and Bailey and all started doing, the moving, traveling circuses and carnivals, they always had the bandwagon. It was the advanced marketing group that went into a town to generate excitement and get people to jump on the bandwagon. So when the circus or carnival came into town, tickets were already pre-sold. And that's what you're hoping to do with your books, is constantly be building that bandwagon. Session 3, this will wrap us up. This is guerrilla marketing. And it's what it sounds like. It's not guerrilla marketing. This is guerrilla marketing, okay? Guerrilla is a member of a small independent group taking part in irregular fighting, typically against larger regular forces. We as authors are guerrilla marketers against all of the other forces that are out there. We're, if you're fortunate enough to be published by one of the really big publishing houses, great. But we are all competing against them, aren't we? In our various genres. It refers to actions or activities performed in an impromptu way, often without authorization. Authors entrepreneurs don't ask always permission to do things. They have the authority and responsibility to do them on their own, because you know what you need to do. Marketing is any action that creates a desire to buy your products or services, communicating the truth in a palatable, clear manner to interested parties. I emphasize the word truth. Do not oversell your book. Do not tell them that you've been declared to be the next, Ernest Hemingway or, John Grisham or whatever. You could be flattered that somebody might mention that, but don't try to put your book in a position where the minute they read it, they're disappointed because you overplayed and oversold your book. Identity, not image. That's important. Address how your book's content will connect with your prospective readers. How does your book identify with the readers that you're talking with and communicating with? You may be at an event and have you have a line of people coming up and talking to you, but every potential reader probably has a slightly different reason to be wanting to read your book. And you have to be finely tuned to listen to what they have to say, to realize what part of your book has value to them. It's not always what you think is important in the book. It's what these people think. I'm always amazed when somebody will come up to me and says, I read Sanctuary or Testament or whatever, and I love this character. And I'm kind of like, really? You know, out of all of the characters, why did you like this particular character? And they tell me, and I think that's fantastic. But that would not be my lead-in character that I would talk the most about. So think about identifying with your readers and how to connect. Satisfy a need and create a benefit. And I'm looking at all the names, I can't see it. Who was it? Terry. You know, your particular book, you've got a perfect scenario for satisfying a need and creating a benefit because it's so personal. And I just saw something. Hold on a minute. Woo. Y'all hang in 1 second. There's somebody that's Tim. He's probably been waiting to get in there. There you go. Sorry, back to it. All right, I just happened to catch that Tim was out there in the waiting room. All right, so Can guerrilla marketer must-have traits? What does it take to be a guerrilla marketer? And it's just a mindset. It's an attitude. Be open-minded to the full extent of marketing. Think out of the box when you're looking at how to present your book, talk about your book, market your book, talk about your book, present your book. All of that's part of marketing. Number 2, you're adaptable to compete with other like-minded guerrilla marketers. You're not afraid to go into your workshops or book festivals. How many of you been into these book festivals where there's all these tables and every table's got an author and they got their books out there and you almost feel, why am I here? I don't qualify to be here. Yes, you do. You have every right to be there as much as the person who has got stacks of books, on their table. Every author has a value for doing what they're doing. Hey, Tim, sorry I had you waiting. Welcome.
Not at all.
Okay.
Thank you.
Guerrilla marketers think out of the box. Become a trailblazer, not a follower. Hometown Novel Nights program that we do down here in Newnan came out of the box thinking to help authors market and present themselves to a growing reading audience down here south of Atlanta, which has now gone beyond south of Atlanta. We've had people Thursday night that were from Alabama and Antonia caught our program from Decatur. And, you got to think out of the box, and doing Zoom meetings, what Robin's doing, that's thinking out of the box. Maintains an easy to understand, easy to follow battle strategy, because you're the one that has to follow it. You're the one that has to kind of know where you're going and why you're doing the things that you're doing. It's not haphazard. You define measurable, precise, and realistic goals. Think about it. Yes, we all dream about being the best sellers on Amazon or New York Times or Atlanta Journal, whatever. But what are realistic goals that you can have that are step goals for selling? My goal is to have, receive an award for my book, along the journey. That would be nice. And, and I've been fortunate that, I've won a couple for Sanctuary. I don't go out of my way to enter a lot of contests, but I was very fortunate. I got a Publishers Weekly National Review for Sanctuary. It came out of the blue. That shocked me to no end. Those are goals that you try to pursue step by step. I had one, by the way, that said I have a bucket list of bookstores that I want to be able to appear at and to sell books at. And this past year, I got hooked up with the Book Loft in Fernandina Beach. I did one attempt at it last year in the fall, and we sold unbelievable amount of books. And I've now been invited back 3 times, and it's one of the premier bookstores in the South. So I go, okay, that's great, and we'll keep that one going. There's another bookstore and another. Those are my goals. You're action-oriented with a burning desire to accomplish your goals. Put your goals somewhere that you can see them and be reminded and check them off. It's a bucket list. Check it off when you've accomplished it, and maybe readjust your goals as you accomplish the certain ones. Understands the best media and means to fulfill your plans. Think about it. Every author's books are different. Every author is different in how he's going to approach this. You are unique. So understand the best means and media to fulfill your goals and your plans for your books. Number 8, orients everything upon your customer. And who is our customer? Our readers. Think in the terms of being the reader, not your editor or you as the writer. Think of, what is my customer, my reader, the person that's going to read my book? What are they thinking? What's going to get them to do the things that I need them to do? So always try to be thinking from that element of it. Number 9, recognizes the fast-changing nature of marketing. Miss Delia, I go back to you because of your long career. You have seen author book sales and publishing go through a huge change in the last 30 years. Huge. You have to be willing to adapt. Who would have guessed that audiobooks have gone the direction that they have? Who would guess that ebooks no longer is the hot button that they used to be? They're still good, but you've got to be able to adapt to, they weren't the end all that everybody thought they were in 2008, 2009, 10 era.
So you think audiobooks are really important?
Yes. I don't go to an event without somebody asking me, Mike, are your books available in audio? And I say they're in the works because I know how important they are. You have to first get your public. Now, for me, as with a publisher on top of me, I'm kind of at their mercy for that. But I would tell you that if you get the opportunity, get your book in audio, you can do it virtually without any real cost to you, so that you can share. More and more people plug in with the digital phones and things, and they listen to their books traveling to and from work, traveling on the road, things of that nature. Number 10 is maintain an unrelenting guerrilla marketing attitude. Basically, if you can't do that, the first 9 steps I just talked about won't matter. You have to, because it's all driven by attitude. You have to be positive, persistent, persevering, so that your inner self comes out, and that secret sauce that I spoke about from the very beginning, is the driving force behind everything that you're doing. Because at the end of the day, we all want to be able to smile when we put our head down on a pillow and look forward to what's happening tomorrow. Promote benefits, not content. You might have told a great story, but for the reader, what is it about the story that's going to grip them? And I'll go back to Terry's book for a moment. Terry, the thing there is, you know how many people that I have already met where they're dealing with issues of abuse. Those stories are great, but the most important thing to read it, the reason they want to read it is because they probably have something in their lives, or they know somebody in their lives that, you know, that this will help benefit. So when you're talking to your reader, address the benefit of the book. Talk about the key points in the book that will touch the reader's heart, their emotions, and not just that it's a great story. Excuse me. It's about them, not you. Again, it's that customer mindset that you're working on. And that begins by knowing your why questions. 3 markets to attend to as a guerrilla marketer. This is the percentage of time and effort and resources. The universe, meaning the big ocean of books and all of the readers. Focus only on 10% of your time dealing with that, because otherwise it'll be overwhelming. Focus 30% of your time on your prospects. Who are your prospective readers? Define your genre and who those readers would be. When you're asked from the publisher, or your agent will ask you, who is your niche market? You need to be able to answer that question. You know, is this book meant for middle age young adults, or, you know, teenagers? Or is it meant for young adults? Is it meant for older, mature adults? You know, be specific in understanding that, and that they're readers of fiction, nonfiction, mystery, suspense, coming of age, fantasy readers. I learned a new genre that I didn't even know existed. It's called space opera, but it's been around forever because that's what Star Wars and Star Trek are, space operas. Then be specific to your actual platform, your customers. Spend most of your time working with, relating with, and building the relationship with your platform. There's the value there because A, they are the ones that are going to read your sequels. B, they're the ones that are going to do the word of mouth advertising for you. There's going to be more books sold by your customers than anybody else. So invest 60% of your time into how do I nurture and connect and relate to my customers. Tactics to consider as we're winding down is direct communication. Understand how to take advantage of your email communications, your social media connections. Artwork quality and investment. Make sure things that your images are top notch. Advertising placement. These are just other things to consider. Flyers, handouts, and business cards are all important. Use them, and it's part of your branding. Word of mouth, reviews, keep stoking the fire for those. And then number 6, continually test and measure. How many of you have your own web page, your own author web page? Not Facebook page, but your own. Okay. How many of y'all have done a Google Analytics of your web page? Do you know how many people are coming to your web page? Do you have any idea? I would suggest go to Google Analytics and get hooked up. If you're in WordPress, it's a simple add to your WordPress program. And I monitor that every day. And on Facebook page, you have an author page. How many of y'all go to check your insights for your author page and see what's your reach of your social page? What is the people that are connecting to you and where they're located and things of that nature? It's scary to see that, but you'll start to see trends that'll help you get better at it. So authorpreneurs understand guerrilla marketing. And, you know, and remember, it's what is not seen that matters the most. What that means is it's not the things that the readers get to see when you're at events. It's everything that took place to get you there. That is the most important thing that you have to be constantly aware of. That's me at the Book Loft in Fernandina, by the way. So just remember that you are the secret sauce. And I hope that this has been a little enlightening as far as attitude for a lot of y'all. Again, this is normally a 4-hour workshop. So we got it done in just over, right at about 90 minutes at this point. And I appreciate everybody's input. Does anybody have any comments or questions at this particular moment?
Mike, I'd like to thank you for your input today and what you had to say, because my book, I wrote it 10 years ago when I was still in the horse business and out and about, and that's how I sold the books. Now I'm not. So I'm going to have to rely on all these things you talked about today to get my book out to people. And it was very, very helpful and inspirational because I'm not finished with the book, but I'm already thinking ahead to how I'm going to advertise it. And this was really, really helpful.
Well,
Inspired me.
No, you did great. I enjoyed, and my wife and I both enjoyed meeting you in Canton, and I look forward to doing that again. What I suggest, and I have them, build a tribe of like you already have here. Get advice, get suggestions, get comments. You can filter what you want to use, but you're going to be surprised how many nuggets show up when you have a good circle of friends that can help you along the way. Having a good, strong network.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
Excellent.
Anybody
Mike,
else?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
How much time do you spend a week marketing your book?
No, I'm at an advantage. I'm retired. Marketing my book. Actually, it's hard to give you a direct answer to, but I would say my advantage for a lot of y'all, except for those that are already retired, I spend anywhere from 2 to 4 hours a day in the morning, typically, going over my social media, my webpage, answering emails, all of that side of things. I try to be done at a reasonable time so I can say hello to my wife and every morning. But I get up early. I'm an early bird. Robin knows that. I'm up, at crack of dawn.
Yeah. 7:30 this morning, I was getting emails.
Yeah, 7:30 in the morning. I'm already, well into my day. Because my other part of my days, either I'm working on hometown novel night projects, helping to get other authors and networking built up, or I'm working on my book 4. I always am adding something to my research, which is what stage I'm at on book 4 right now. I'm a research nut, so I'm researching. But that's the advantage of being retired. You have to just, again, put it in percentages, Terry. You work, right? Are you still working?
Except because of COVID, but yes, I still have a full-time job.
Right.
But when I started writing my book, I realized I needed a platform. So I started writing my book in August of 2018.
Right.
January 1st of 2019, I started blogging every week, and I've continued that. Then I finished the book in November of 2019. I've currently submitted to about 30 publishers.
Okay.
And then August 27th of this year, I launched a podcast to grow my platform, to grow my audience, because
Excellent.
Coming back from the blog post, people started asking a lot of questions and engaging with me. And I thought, okay, this would be another way for me to connect with the audience on my subject matter. So, right. And that in the first week, I already had 250 downloads, and that seems to be going very, very well. So, that's why I asked, because I write one article every week. I'm 2 weeks ahead on my article writing, and now I'm recording a podcast every week, and I'm 2 weeks ahead of that. So for me, there's a lot of time that goes into the research of the article, the writing of the article, then creating and uploading the blog post, because that also goes on to Thrive Global, onto medium.com, because those are other avenues that I'm now engaged with an audience members to grow my platform in my name. So yes. I'm doing all of that, and it's time consuming.
It
I was wondering how long.
So what I would tell you again is go back to the notes about guerrilla marketing, define your goals, and keep it in measurable swaths of time, and keep yourself so you're disciplined with that percentages of time, making sure that you're staying focused on what matters the most right now before your book comes out. You're building platform, you're building an awareness of who you are, and hopefully starting to build and stoke the fires of, of curiosity of what's coming. And so when you're ready to put a launch team together, you've got a ready team ready to go. That's fantastic. You got a great subject. I mean, I know 2 or 3 women down here that do have similar books, and they've got some similar success stories. So excellent. Anybody else? Yes, Tim.
Mike, and maybe the subject came up before, so if I've asked this question before, forgive me, but there's something to be said for the physical location for a writer. There's something to be said for not being interrupted. There's something to be said for being able to get into the flow. So if you'd like to talk just a little bit about that.
Oh, yeah.
How do you protect your ability to be productive while you're writing and researching?
I got an advantage. I'm a grandfather and I'm retired. My wife and I when I first started writing, my wife and I came to an understanding that when I entered Shiloh, which was our term for me writing my stories, I was out of town. I mean, it was like I went to the office. And the only person that I actually talked to during the day would be a video conference with my writing coach and editor who would help me when I needed to talk to her. Outside of that, I was talking to my characters in the privacy of my office. My wife felt bad for me because I was stuck in the back corner bedroom in our house. And she gave me a graduation. If I took my Newnan Library picture off from behind me here, you'd see I'm now in the center of the house because my wife vacates when I'm doing, book stuff. And I get to look out, talk to the birds and do my thing here. But yeah, it's sacred cow. Years ago, I had a boss. He used to have literally a cutout of a cow that he would hang on the door. And what that meant, anytime that his office door had the cow hanging there, it was called sacred cow time. Do not disturb Tony right now. It's not a good idea. And the same thing holds here. So yeah, if writing your book is important to you, you will find the right setting and make the right sacrifices to invest in your writing. And that just adds more value to that internal why motivation that you have as an author. So good question, Tim. But everybody's got,
But I agree, Tim.
What's that?
It is difficult. It is difficult to carve out that niche and to find a way to, isolate yourself to be able to focus. I have ADHD. I have to take medication to keep myself focused. But even then, if I have distractions, it's crazy, I work full time, I do the Inklings, and then I'm trying to write this last book, and hopefully not my last, but of the series. And so it really is difficult to carve out time to do what you need to do and minimize the distractions. So
it's harder.
Mike, you have it easy. You have it easy.
No, I don't. No. I don't confess to saying I got it easy. When I first started Sanctuary, that I was just concerned about writing my first novel. And I there was no hometown novel night. I wasn't worrying about events. I wasn't worrying about, I was starting to get involved in Atlanta Writers Club to help learn a little bit of the process. But, 90% of my energy was into writing. And, now 3 books later, going into the 4th book, Hometown Novel Nights has gone places I never thought it would. And, and being involved with people like y'all and doing these things, they take time, and you have to kind of dice it out. So I feel fortunate that I was able to retire early in my life to be able to do this. But hey, I turn 70 next year, so I'm on a race to get certain things done before my brain falters. So
Wait till you're 83.
Or 85.
Listen, I will wait till I'm 83. I would glad to wait.
That's all.
Oh.
Anybody else? I appreciate seeing all of y'all. I've met some of y'all before, Canton. I can't wait to be up there again as soon as it's all clear. I get to Woodstock on a regular basis for my grandkids, but coming up that extra 20, 30 minutes up the road is, I'm looking forward to doing that again and to visiting with y'all personally. So thank you guys for putting up with me.
It's a pleasure. It's our pleasure. Thank you for coming here and speaking with us tonight or today. Really appreciate it.
Well, you can, if you would, if you want to stay in touch, my Facebook page is, if you go to the @TM Brown Author, you'll find me on Facebook. My webpage is tmbrownauthor.com. I keep it simple, branding. And Instagram, it's TM Brown Author the same way. So, I'd love for you to connect up, friend up. And if you happen to read one of the 3 books, let me know how you liked it. It's not for everybody. It's Southern fiction, has a lot of fun with it, with small town life. But the 3rd book, I really, really is the best of the 3 for sure. I've had fun writing that one. So, yeah, and I look forward to hearing success stories from every one of y'all. Look forward
Mike,
to
are your books serial?
It's a series. There's 3 books called the Shiloh Mystery Series. Matter of fact, my publisher just got Amazon to put it out as a 3-book series in Kindle for $9.97. You can get all 3. And if you go to either my TM Brown author page on Amazon, or I guess you can go to Shiloh Mystery Series, it'll, you should be able to pull it up. So if you're into Kindle, there's a freebie, or almost freebie. For less than the cost of a McDonald's meal, you got 3 Kindle books. So
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all. Appreciate all of you. Robin, I'm going to let you finish your meeting, and I'll just get quiet.
Oh, well, I pretty much didn't have anything really to, extra to say, but
Well, thanks for
thank
putting this
you,
together,
thank
Rob.
you, Mike, for putting me on the spot.
Well, you know what? I was giving you the last 8 minutes of our 2 to 4 o'clock time window. I told you I was going to try to stay to 75 minutes on my programming, so we did close. So listen, thank all of y'all. And
Thanks, everybody. I gotta go. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Becky.
Thank all of y'all.
Bye.
Look forward to talking with y'all soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
Enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Glad y'all
My dogs
could
are pawing at me now. I think they're hungry.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. Y'all come visit some of the Hometown Novel Nights Zoom stuff too. Y'all enjoy it. October 15th is Mystery Night. So Robin will share some of that information.
Yeah. All right. Damon, just FYI, if you're interested in critique